In this video, we'll cover the use of OpenVas as a vulnerability scanner to identify the attack surface, specifically for our Linux target. Your assignment asks that you actually do the same for the Windows target, so both the Linux and the Windows. The video only will focus on the Linux one. So to get things started, you need to make sure you're signed in to your Kali. From there, what we need to make sure is that we start OpenVas. So this can be done through vulnerability analysis, going into and using the OpenVas start. That's the first one, is start. Or you can go from the command line and initiate OpenVas start. So you hit enter. This will start the service. Once you start OpenVas through the command line or by using the application menu and clicking on the menu icon, you need to open up a browser. From the browser, go into the OpenVas bookmark. The username and password are ITsec. Both are the same, lowercase. If they're not pre-saved, enter them in and sign in. From here, what we need to do, the first thing is we need to define a target. Once we define a target, the target will need to be defined with what ports we would like to scan. We want to scan all TCP ports from port 1 through 65,535. Once we've defined the target and the ports we'd like to scan, we need to actually define the scan task. That will include the type of scan. In our case, it's going to be full and fast. We're starting kind of blank. The scan, we are not going to use any previously discovered information, and we are going to launch it against our specified target. If you launch the scan against a system outside of scope, you could be in violation of your rules of engagement, your scope, and you could be a subject of legal actions. So let's go ahead and define target. So if you click on targets, you may have some things pre-populated. Go ahead and click on the little star, left click, and put in the name. We're going to call it Linux. Once you do that, you need to specify the IP address, 1.15. And how do I know that? Well, for your environment, the IP address will be different, and you need to specify the IP address for your own system. So in here, if you notice, the IP address for me is obtained by using the ifconfig command. So ifconfig, and if you're looking into above, I had to log in with msfadmin. I had to execute sudo --i and then provide the password for msfadmin, which is msfadmin, in order to be able to freely execute these commands. So as I look into the IP address for my current system is 10.10.1.15. Again, for your environment may be different. So specify here, and then in the port list, you need to go in and select all TCP. Once you do that, you can click create. In this same space, you can define username and password if you know what they are. It's going to do an inside-out scan versus outside-in. The inside-out is going to take longer time, but it's going to provide inside-out information, like it's going to be familiar with applications that are running different packages and whether or not there are patches available for them if you have internet access. For our environment, you're not going to be able to get the same level of detail because the different VMs that we have are not connected to the outside world. So you're not going to be able to pull patches and stuff like that. So once we define the target, the next thing is to go in and define a scan task. So under scans, tasks, you're going to click on the little star and new task. Put in your first and last name, and when it comes to screenshots, make sure you have a screenshot of the newly created target. That's your Linux target. Make sure you have a screenshot of the newly created configuration scan or task. So what are we going to scan? You need to, in here, make sure you select the name of the target you specified. I call it Linux. And then this is making sure that the scan config is full and fast. Discovery is kind of like an nmap scan. Okay, so full and fast, and we click create. So once the task is created, if you scroll down, you're going to see there is a new task that I just created. I need to click on the play button to actually start the scan. How long is it going to take? Approximately an hour. It could take a little bit longer or less depending on the hardware of the lab environment. Now, once the task is completed, you can come in and look into the dashboard. The dashboard is pretty neat. It gives you a high-level overview of the different vulnerabilities and kind of vulnerability exposure scoring and stuff like that. So it tells us the different vulnerabilities that are available and stuff like that. Specifically for our scan, this is the dashboard and what it looks like. It gives you a high-level overview that it's using Common Vulnerability Scoring System version 2 with high severity 7. There's 36 that are medium and 88 that are on the low side. What does the result look like? So if you go into tasks and we select the one, in this case I have one completed from before, I can see, let's see, how long did it take? About 17 minutes in this one. In order to get to the actual results, I'm going to click on, I think it's the report. From the report, I'll be able to review the detailed results. So if I click on the date, let's see, there we are. So here the actual results. So we see that there is OS end of life, there's a Java RMI, possible backdoor, and so on. So the purpose of using OpenVas and Nessus is to compare the two and the difference in the results. In order to export the results, what we can do is we can come in here and we can select a CSV. Obviously we want the results, not just the hosts. And then the NBE format is going to be the one that we will use to import into Metasploit. So for HTML, the HTML is really useful for human readable format. It's kind of nice to see the results and how they're high level of different services ports that were discovered, and then the vulnerability. So if you're looking into the CVSS, it's 10. If you look into the actual network vulnerability test, this is your vulnerability. It's OS end-of-life detection. So if you're with this, you can look into the detail of the actual vulnerability, the method, the summary of it, and then you're looking into for a potential result in suggestion for corrective action.